Hi, I'm Kristin Duncan. I'm a real estate agent and investor in Orlando, Florida, and Asheville, North Carolina. And today I want to talk to you about a property that I recently sold and why I sold it. This was a duplex that I bought in 2019. I thought I would have it forever, but when I started talking to people and thinking about options, it became clear that I needed to sell it, and I was being really closed-minded, thinking I was going to keep it forever. So I just want to share my thought process with you, and let me throw out the disclaimer. I'm not a math whiz. Every investor is going to have a little bit different flair to how they invest. I'm sure I'm missing a few little numbers here and there, but to me, these are the numbers that made sense in my head, and I just tried to keep it as simple as possible without overcomplicating it, because money can come and go real quickly in real estate investing. Sometimes you get lucky and sometimes crazy things happen. So these were my numbers and how I did it, and I hope it helps you. So I am going to reference some math that I did on the side over here ahead of time, because I am not good at math in my head. So if you see me looking over, that's what I'm doing. So I bought this property. It's a duplex in Orlando, Florida in 2019 for $211,000. I put maybe like 30,000, let's call it, into it. So all in, let's just say $240,000. So that's how much I consider the property purchased for, since that's the total in. So here's what got me thinking about whether I wanted to sell or not. I knew there were some big repairs ahead. This is nothing abnormal. The ACs were creeping up on 10 years. And again, this is a duplex, so you have two of everything. The kitchen appliances were creeping up on 10 years. Hot water heaters were creeping up on 10 years. And I just added a driveway to both sides, which really added value. I got more than my return on that. But I also thought, well, it doesn't have a garage. I was also limited on how much the area was appreciating in rent. The rent wasn't increasing at the pace that I was hoping it would. So I actually wasn't cash flowing every month. I was pretty much breaking even, which, if I had more faith in that area, it wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing, but it just wasn't for me in that moment. I knew with all these expenses coming up and no cash flow that it just didn't quite make sense. I was gonna be dumping a lot of money into this property. Also, the taxes and insurance went up, which is another reason I was not cash flowing, or the main reason I wasn't cash flowing. Property taxes in that area went up, and I do think the area is picking up, and that's part of the reason. And then the insurance, just because it's an older property, even though everything was updated, had doubled more than doubled actually, since I bought it. So those were some of the reasons that I started thinking, maybe this isn't the right thing to do. So here's the basic math I did at first. I thought it would sell around $400,000. It actually ended up selling at $420,000. And I'll tell you in a minute why it went higher and why I think it was a good idea for this guy that bought it. But so I calculated first at $400,000, take away the $240,000 I paid for it, take away about $40,000 in capital gains, because this, not only was I getting capital gains on this, but I bought this property with a 1031 exchange. So I kind of had a double whammy. And then about $20,000 in closing costs. That left me with $180,000. And again, that was at $400,000. So the guy actually bought it for $420,000. So I ended up with about $200,000, nice even number to work with today. So then the question becomes, if I had $200,000 to invest, would I buy this property? If interest rates were lower, a cash out refi is something I would consider, but it wasn't in the cards. Knowing what the interest rate is right now, it just didn't make sense. So the big glaring question for me with, bright neon letters is, if I had $200,000 to invest, would I buy this duplex? And I'll tell you why the answer became no, even though I thought I was going to keep it forever. I calculated the average appreciation on the property after 20 years. How much would it be worth? And I wasn't exactly sure how to do this. I ran this a couple different ways. First, I did the initial starting price of $211,000 over 25 years. And that was a little bit lower. That was closer to the $550,000, $600,000 range of what it would be worth in 20 years. Then I calculated at today's current value, so $400,000 over 20 years, and that got us closer to $700,000. Now, don't reinvent the wheel. Use an online calculator for this stuff. You don't have to learn how to do this math unless you want to. I didn't. There are great online calculators. I literally just Googled it and pulled up the first couple that came up just to kind of make sure they were accurate. And that worked just fine. So in that case, let's average them out. One said close to 600, one said close to 700. So I ran my numbers at 650. Probably wouldn't even be a bad idea to run your numbers at 600 just to be on the safe side. And that is again what I expect the property to be worth after 20 years. Now, with the roof situation in Florida, how much ACs run, I knew all this stuff was gonna need replaced probably twice in that 20 years. Again, it was an older property, I think built in the 50s, if I recall, block, duplex. So I estimated 2 new roofs over the 20 years, 2 sets of appliances, 2 ACs, 1 replumb, 2 hot water heaters, and a new septic. I'm probably looking at about $115,000 in repairs over that 20 years, which is pretty steep. And again, a little bit scary since I wasn't currently cash flowing anymore. And I also don't know what taxes are going to be at that point. I knew this year what taxes, capital gains taxes were if I sold. I don't know that will be the same if I sold in 20 years. So it was just a little bit safer for me to, understand today's taxes. With that math, we are at $650,000 that it would be worth, minus the $240,000 that I paid for the property, minus a minimum of $115,000 in repairs, leaves me netting around $295,000. It's not bad, but it didn't wow me. That's over 20 years. Now, I do need to account for eventual cash flow, right? Because I'm gonna start paying more of this off. Rates could, or rental rates could increase. So I do need to account for some cash flow. And I was gonna estimate about $90,000 in that 20 years. But even with that, we're still looking at under $400,000, and it just didn't seem like enough. 20 years is a long time. So then what I did is calculate the numbers, and I double checked this with a financial planner. And again, start by using a calculator online. There's plenty of them, where I calculated if I took the $200,000 that I currently have out of the property and invested it, what would that look like at 20 years? No work for me, just sit back and watch it grow, right? And you always have to keep in mind, it's gonna go up and down. I didn't expect to get this quickly. This was a 20, 25, 30-year plan. But I ran numbers at 5, if I took that 200,000 and it went at 5% for 20 years, I would have $530,000. If it went for 6%, I would have closer to $640,000. So now it's becoming really obvious that I'm going to make probably a lot more money by pulling that $200,000 out and just investing it. No work, right? Because with all these other things we're talking about, coordinating contractors, you guys know I live in 2 or 3 different states at any time. So doing this from out of state, tenant hassles, I did not calculate a vacancy rate in all of this. So it's a no-brainer at this point for me to sell the property, right? So I made up my mind, I'm selling. Worst case scenario, I'm making $530,000 instead of about $400,000. Best case, I'm looking at $640,000. But then I wanted to take it and explore some other options. Can I make more than $640,000 with other investments? Because I like to diversify, right? I have my real estate business. I do have investment accounts. I have a retail shop. I have investment properties. I've always heard, think of your money like the legs of a chair. You want at least 4 sides so that if you lose one, that you're still kind of balanced. So that's the analogy that I always keep in my head. So here's what I've ended up doing so far with the money. I haven't spent it all, but I had about $200,000 from the sale of this property. I bought a business with a partner. My half of that business was $35,000. Probably by the time I did, some repairs and updates and things, it was closer to about $45,000, $50,000. But we are looking at profiting in a bad year, $15,000, just my half. In a bad year, about $15,000. In a good year, I think we'll make between 20 and 30, probably $25,000 and $30,000. So now I'm going from just, a little bit of cash flow or no cash flow on my rental property to tens of thousands of dollars a year that I can now turn into other things. Plus that business is gonna grow, right? Someone sold it to me for more than they created it or bought it for. So hopefully in 20 years, I could also sell that business and make even more money on it. At 20 years, if I make $20,000 a year, which I think is very conservative, I'm looking at $400,000 over the 20 years. That could go up to $600,000, I think, if if it starts doing a little bit better, which I expect it will. So that's more or just as much as I was going to make on the investment property alone. I know all this math is confusing, but it does make sense. So I bought another investment property with it as well. It's a smaller property. It's also a 2-1. It's kind of like one half of the duplex, but I paid about $200,000 for it. It's in an area that I think is really gonna appreciate. There was already some equity in it. If we put about 20,000 in, it's going to cash flow and it's going to appreciate, I believe, at a higher rate than my investment property. So I'm estimating over the 20 years, I could make a minimum of $250,000 on that property. So now I've bought the business, I bought the investment property, and I still have about $95,000 left over. And at minimum, if I just invest it and keep it invested for 20 years, that's $300,000. I don't know what I'm gonna do with the rest of that yet. Of course, I'm looking at a couple other business opportunities because I can't help myself. But now we are at over $1 million in 20 years. And that's what I wanna stress here. Make your money work for you. Keeping the duplex wasn't a horrible idea. I would have made money, it would have appreciated, but it would have been probably an equal amount of stress as these other two things are. And now I've turned these other two things plus investing into over $1 million. So I'm happy to analyze your properties with you. If you have investment properties that you're thinking of selling, you're looking at other options, you wanna buy a different investment property, let's talk about it. Let's run the numbers. I love this stuff. This is, to me, the most fun part of real estate, is seeing how you can help other people build wealth and how you can work together and brainstorm and mastermind and come up with different ideas. Like I said, every investor has a little bit of a different flair. But I hope this helps. Happy to send you numbers on mine, run numbers with yours, and let's talk some investments. Thank you so much, and don't forget to subscribe.